G'day guys, Adam Cogan here from SSW TV, and we are here at the Digital Workplace Conference in Sydney, and I have a very special guest, Robert Tucker. How are you, Robert?
I'm fine, thank you, Adam.
Now, I have really wanted to interview you because you do serious migrations. You've done...
Well, we do one serious migration.
When I talk to companies and they're frightened because they have a big, on-premise infrastructure, and they're talking about going to the cloud, they're not talking about shell size going to the cloud.
Yep.
Do you know, how do you measure this thing? Do you know how many site collections and how many gigabytes?
Well, the complexity of the migration, if you're going to move from a on-premise farm to somewhere like, to the main target, which would be SharePoint Online, the key thing that Microsoft is concerned about really is the size, the volume, so the number of databases and the content. The site collections don't really actually make much difference.
But how many, do you know the numbers of how many you
Yeah, so a standard SharePoint farm would have up to 500 content databases, potentially of any size, because the way that the site collections grow across the content databases, but content databases are the key thing, the volume of the content. Volume of the content, if you're doing a migration to SharePoint Online, will dictate how long it takes to migrate.
And what about Shell's scenario? Like how many users, how many site collections
so when
do you guys have? How many sites?
Right, so when we when we actually did the migration date, which was in March this year, we had 10,500 site collections, we had 90,000 sites,
wow.
We had 180 terabytes of content, 7,500 workflows, we had 160,000 users dependent on that platform, and we migrated 17 million permissions.
Okay, that's a serious size. All right, that's bigger than any customers I talk to.
Yes.
All right, so can you tell us the blockers that stopped you migrating? And I'll go back over time. I think you started in the 2007 period. Shell went to SharePoint then, is that correct?
So in about 2009-10, we implemented SharePoint 2007, which was on-premise satellite farm. We moved to the early version of BPOS-D 2010.
Hold on, you had SharePoint and OpenText LiveLink, I recall?
Yeah, the key at that time document management platform was OpenText LiveLink.
And your users were allowed to use document management in SharePoint or document management
at that time, yeah. So LiveLink was at that time been in use for over 10 years. So SharePoint was the newcomer on the block, and we were looking to migrate from OpenText LiveLink to SharePoint as a platform. And
then you migrated to 2010?
We upgraded to the early version of BPOS-D, so the cloud with a small c in terms of the actual Microsoft platform. And we moved from 2007 to 2010. Yes.
Right, and the cloud being BPOS, the Microsoft service.
Yeah, that's correct.
Okay, and then you went from that to 2013?
So then we had to...
And was LiveLink still in the picture of all this way?
The LiveLink migrations of content was ongoing very early in the days of SharePoint 2010.
Right.
We actually migrated all of LiveLink content by the end of 2015. And we upgraded from BPOS-D 2010 to BPOS-D 2013 in April 2014. So LiveLink was still ongoing at that time. The migrations actually escalated through 2015, so we could complete them by the end of the year. And we moved just over 100 terabytes of data.
Wow, okay. And so when you were migrating, was there a lot of pain each time you were migrating, or was the biggest amount of pain out of all those migrations going from 2013 to Office 365?
By far, on a magnitude of difficulty from BPOS-D 2013 to SharePoint Online. Fundamentally, you're moving outside of the network, so you're moving to an internet-based service, and so connectivity is different, authentication is different. You've got to migrate all of that content. Fortunately, Microsoft was managing the migration. And because of the volume of content, we only had one option, which is the Big Bang migration, which is the lift and shift of all of the content to move to the cloud. So we had to be prepared. We had to meet all of the prerequisites. So the client readiness, the client requirements. We had to make sure that we had a platform which was supported on SharePoint Online. Customizations, removal of all of the full trust code, a lot of various things, and this was in the initial stages of the migration, so the early information from Microsoft, as it were.
So the current requirements that you need, if I break down what you've just said, the client requirements, was that an IE version or a Chrome version, and what other, Office? Is there a requirement?
Essentially the two key factors of what Microsoft will support for end users to consume the SharePoint Online service. And that is Internet, as a minimum, Internet Explorer 11. And at the time we started the migration, it was Office 2010. Within a few months, about 8 months of actually starting the migration process, Office 2010 came out of extended support, so then the minimum requirements was Office 2013.
And is that what you're on now?
We actually are on Office 2016 Pro Plus, which is the Office 365 version of Office.
And how many users do you have to get that deployed to?
We deployed across about 110,000 users globally for all of the desktops that we have.
Mainly for the Office 365 requirement?
Well, we were in the process of upgrading both the operating system, moving from Vista to Windows 7 to Windows 10, so it's an ongoing process.
Okay.
But we also have to maintain within the support of Microsoft, which of course it expires. So we keep up with the browser version, keep up now with the Office version, and now we're on Pro Plus. We don't have to keep up anymore because Microsoft maintains that for us.
Oh yeah, that's right.
So there's no more. So the benefit is to move to Pro Plus. It's not, we don't have to do any large-scale upgrades of any Office because it's constantly being renewed.
Wow, all those pain of those days, 2007 to 2010,
yes.
2010 is gone, 2010 to 2013 finished.
Yeah, the problems have changed slightly in how they manifest themselves, but yeah, the large-scale upgrades have gone.
Now, the other client requirement you mentioned was that the browser. Do you guys use Chrome or IE?
We use both. We have both in use in the company, but the standard that we promote is Internet Explorer 11.
Okay, all right, cool. Now the other side of things, not the client requirements, but the customizations. Explain to me the pain of which ones you've had. Have you had pain with customizations or sandbox solutions, or WSPs like farm solutions with code and farm solutions without code? Explain it.
So the core requirements of moving to SharePoint Online, or actually moving to SharePoint 2013, first off is that Microsoft doesn't want to support any what you would call full trust code, so code where you create in Visual Studio and deploy as a solution to the platform. So it's not.
Could I get you to step back a sec?
Yep.
So did you have any problems with just customizations at all?
No problems with customizations, because principally customizations didn't involve, if they're end user deployed, they're typically just client-side rendered customization, so using JavaScript or style sheets and what have you.
And nobody did stuff with SharePoint Designer that caused grief?
Yes, they did, but of course we went through and made sure, so we removed all custom master pages. We removed so we cleaned up all of that. Was part of the actual preparation work for the migration.
That's why it didn't cause you pain, right?
That's correct.
And what about sandbox solutions? Did you have any of those? Did that cause problems?
We did have a few. So the key around sandbox solutions was the number of resources that they require. We had one or two, but they were already end of life, if you like, so the actual business processes that depended on them. And so in the end, we didn't really have much problem with sandbox solutions.
All right, so tell us about WSPs and all about that.
I'm not a techie, right? So
this is what we build all the time, so I'm interested in, because that stopped us migrating from 2007 to 2013 without looking at all that code we developed.
So WSPs, you can create a DLL and stick it in a WSP as part of your custom solution to deploy to a site collection. So DLLs are no-go. Can't do that on SharePoint 2013, or you shouldn't do it on 2013. You can on premises, but you shouldn't, and it's not allowed at all on SharePoint Online. So we had to indeed find all of the WSPs that were deployed, understand where all of the DLLs were in those, and remove them all. And also, as part of that, when you're deploying, for instance, if you take and deploy sites based on a site template that has been saved with a WSP, that full trust code gets carried across in the template. So all site collections that have been created with site templates, for instance, also had to be remediated. All of the STP files for lists and libraries where solutions were deployed also had to be remediated. We remediated them by deleting them all. So that was to stop people to try and proliferate more sites and more libraries that included full trust code. It took us 4 complete scans of the tenant to remove all traces of all of the full trust code.
Wow. Okay. And did anyone get upset when you deleted all this?
No, it was just a change in behavior.
Right.
So I mean, people could still use templated, but they had to make sure that they had removed all of the full trust code before they could use them again.
Okay. How long did this migration take from beginning to the day that you went live in Office 365?
The decision was made to move to SharePoint Online fairly early on, so around June 2014, which is a couple of months after we migrated to 2013. And we completed the move to SharePoint Online on the 19th of March 2017.
Wow, 3 years?
Yeah, just under.
And how many people were involved?
We had quite a lot. There were 25 Microsoft teams involved throughout the whole process.
Oh.
We had a couple of hundred testers from a shell perspective. We had a team around 40 people for the first year and a half, slightly less for the last year, which might seem a bit odd, but by that time we had moved to the point that Microsoft was doing most of the heavy lifting.
Okay. How many dry runs did you do?
Well, Microsoft at the time was mandating the dry run is the first one, just the first cut. So there's no content involved. They just basically take over the configurations and the site structure.
And they make you
they
test
promote,
it.
They do, yeah, so they promote at least the dry run plus one, possibly two UATs, as they call them, user acceptance tests. So we actually planned for doing one dry run and two UATs. We ended up doing one dry run and 4 UATs by the end of because of some of the issues that we discovered and some of essentially the gap in Microsoft knowledge to support a UAT environment for a company of our size, which is why we ended up doing 4.
Okay, and once you went live, what problems did your users whinge about?
There was no whinging.
No whinging?
No. They were very pleased.
Is that because they're all Dutch?
No. The key thing I think about the migration to SharePoint Online was the relief from the business, which allowed them to start migrating more content onto the platform. So the cost benefit was there, the enhanced capabilities of SharePoint Online. The businesses really appreciated the move to SharePoint Online once we were actually there. The big pain was actually getting to the migration.
Really? So with all those users, no one complained? Nobody said, hey, where's my SharePoint designer? Did you hit the 5,000 record limit for lists and stuff?
No, because we'd done all of that preliminary work. So we'd already identified all of the lists and libraries. We prepared the businesses the impact that they should expect. And so they were already familiar with the list view threshold, for instance, on 2013. The key thing was, well, let me put it this way. We had the happy hour, or where the list view threshold is not an impact.
Sorry, what's the happy hour? The
happy hour is where the 5,000 limit retrieval for lists and libraries on views doesn't apply. So in other words, you can retrieve back more.
Is that a shell thing? Or is
no, it's a SharePoint Online, or sorry, SharePoint 2013 configuration, if you like.
But do they relax that on Office 365 as well?
On Office 365, the happy hour doesn't exist at all.
Right.
And so your list view threshold of 5,000, which is what it's set at on SharePoint Online, is in place permanently, all 24 hours.
Okay, so people wouldn't have been happy with that, would
No. We had businesses who were dependent on the happy hour in order to execute reports and what have you. But we did a lot of work with the businesses, and we did a lot of preliminary remediation work on lists and libraries to make sure that they could continue to work after we migrated to SharePoint Online. Sorry.
So Robert, I'll finish off. I'll ask you a question kind of for Microsoft. What are some of the things that you would love, the SharePoint, the Office 365 team to give you would make life nicer?
They know most of it. I think there are 3 things. So we have a huge, complex permissions management model across. One of the key things that we'd like to see would be a deny policy rather than an include policy. So preventing somebody accessing a site rather than saying everybody who needs to access it. Secondly, there's the cadence of the updates and the knowledge of what those updates are. If we had better information on that, that would be important. That would be very useful to us to inform the business. So you don't mind the updates coming, you just want to know exactly what date they come. We'd like to know when they're going to hit. Right. And the last thing is to, which I didn't mention to you before, is to keep their documentation up to date. It sadly lacks. Sometimes you get documentation which is not up to date.
That's a hard one.
It is.
That's a really hard one. I've always wished that they would make their URLs neater. They're a bit messy. And also it'd be good if, you know, when you delete a site collection, they clean up that metadata stuff. That would be handy for you guys too, wouldn't it?
Yeah, we have seen in the past where you've got a site collection located metadata term sets.
Yes.
That they don't disappear. When you delete the site collection, they do hang around in the term store. But that would be nice if they could clean those up as well.
Well, this has been fascinating talking to you, Robert, because hopefully other companies that are thinking of doing it, they're smaller than you guys, so they should be able to do it if you guys can.
Sure. The only advice I would give is to work very closely with Microsoft.
Right, okay. All right, thank you. It's been awesome.
Thank you very much.
And this is Adam Cogan signing off for SSW TV.